After playing every food in the game at least once, I wanted to share my thoughts on each food and how I would rank them. 90% of the time when I play, I skip starters, sides, and desserts, so I'm only ranking main dishes here. The majority of the time, I'm also automating foods, so I really don't care about the other options you can grab, such as alternate pizza or burger toppings, because I'm not choosing those, so those won't really factor into the rankings. And therefore, the rankings are a mix of how streamlined and fun I find the automation process mixed with vibes. I can't objectively justify the vibes part of this, but I'm a data scientist, so I have experience putting the data into the science, which is totally relevant here, and I think you'll find this interesting or helpful even if you disagree. I also have foods ranked alphabetically because it's more fun that way. So anyway, let's get started with breakfast. So breakfast is interesting because it's really simple in some sense, but it has some odd qualities to it. So the recipe is you make a dough ball. So you take flour, mix it with water, you get a dough ball, you cook that. The cooking time is extremely long. And then you get bread, you take that bread out, you slice the bread, or you can portion it, and then you cook that again. So it's a very hob heavy food. It also uses the portioner, and I like using the portioner. It just, for whatever reason, portioners are cool and they don't get used that much. So it gets points for that. However, it's also very simple. You don't have much need for mixers or combiners. The recipe you can actually automate with grabbing the flour, putting it into a sink, and then using a combiner on the flour. That's one way you can do it to get your dough ball. Because of its long cooking time and the fact that it poses some issues for the safety hob, it just takes an extremely long time to make the bread. It just feels a little awkward when you're trying to automate it. You can alleviate that if you have freezers and stuff like that, but I think overall I like it. I respect it. I think B is probably a nice place to put it, probably a high B, but it's not quite as good as, I don't get quite as excited to automate it as some of the other foods on this list, such as burgers. So burgers are like the bread and butter of getting started with automation. Like if you haven't fully tried to go deep on an automation run, burgers are one of the best things to start with. It's very simple. You just take burger, you cook it on a hob, and most of the time a safety hob is more than fast enough. By the time you get 2, that'll get you super far into the run. You don't have to worry about that type of thing slowing you down. If you want to go really fast, you can also, this is something that people in the comments have pointed out to me that I didn't realize, but actually is a great idea. You can actually have a combiner place the bun on the burger on a danger hob, and therefore it will never actually burn, because as soon as you put the bun on the burger, it'll stop cooking. And so actually you can also do this with a danger hob, which I think can also help eliminate or reduce grease pretty heavily, which is a big problem with burgers. It's probably the biggest problem with burgers is the grease, and also the fact that you don't make very much money per burger served. Those are kind of the 2 big challenges. But if you're serving this, it is super simple. You don't need that many grabbers and that big of a setup to get it going. So I think it goes A. It's very streamlined. There's not much to it, and the thing I like in this game is not taking someone's order and then figuring out what I need to serve them. It's imagining that my restaurant is a factory and then making a mass production of exactly one thing. And so I really get into a flow state of cook a thing, take somebody's order, give them the food, their plates end up somewhere. I take that back to the kitchen, and as I'm doing that, I cook up another burger, and then there's the process of slowly getting the automation going. So in any case, I think burgers end up in A tier for that you can really get into a nice flow state pretty easily. The next one is cakes. Cakes are also kind of weird. The full automation, I believe, requires 3 or 5 combiners, if I remember correctly. It's the most combiner heavy food in the game, which is kind of crazy. It also requires portioners, which is always cool. It means that whatever food that you cook, instead of getting one thing out of it, you're getting multiple out of it. For a more complex recipe, which cake involves flour that you have to get into a dough ball, and then you need to add, I believe, cooked chocolate to it. So you need to cook chocolate, then put that with the dough ball, and then add eggs. But the eggs have to be cut first in a mixer or with your hands. I might be getting that messed up, and it's a complicated recipe, and it requires a lot of things that go into it. And actually the thing that I dislike the most about it is the eggs. And this is purely a vibes thing. There's nothing objective about this, but the fact that the amount of effort it takes to automate the egg process feels really bad, because the processing time for opening an egg and then adding that to the recipe is extremely small. Like you can cut an egg in like a split second, even on a normal counter. So when you get a mixer and a grabber, you like grab out of the egg building, the thing that stores all your eggs, you grab that, you put it into a mixer, and that mixes instantly, and then you need another grabber to put it onto a combiner, and then you combine that with the recipe before that goes onto the hob or whatever it might be. I just like don't like that. And again, purely vibes based. If the time it took to crack the egg was longer, like that would probably alleviate it for me. But that's really the biggest downside, I'll say, for cakes. Otherwise, after you cook the cakes, you get 4 of them and you portion them, and you can then put those into, you know, like a frozen prep station, or you can even serve them on the tray itself. And I believe you don't have to do dishes, which is super nice. You don't have to serve them on plates. So cakes is cool for that. Not having to deal with plates is nice. The complex recipe kind of holds it back. And also the cooking time, I believe, is fairly long, which means safety hobs are a little dangerous, especially at the start of the day for later times in the run. Cakes are also interesting. They're probably going to be the only, or maybe one of the only foods I talk about their alternate recipes, because instead of adding an alternate recipe, it just transforms the original recipe into an alternate recipe. And so cakes are really cool in that sense, that you can change your recipe into another recipe and not have to worry about having 2 recipes you now need to make for your customers, which is a big downside in an automation run. I mean, going from having to serve one thing to having to serve 2 things is a huge downside. So anyway, for those reasons, I think cakes probably earn an A or a high B. I think I'm gonna actually throw them into high B for now and put them above breakfast, because they're interesting. You don't have to worry about plates, but just the complexity of the recipe takes a bit to get down. And there is also complexity with the trays situation, where getting the raw cakes onto a tray, when I think you only start with 2 trays, or actually you might even start with only 1 tray. It's a big issue in terms of, you know, you have a bunch of cakes on a tray and you need to portion them off, and you need to do that before you can put the recipe onto the tray before you can cook it again. And that represents kind of a big bottleneck, especially early in the run, and it incentivizes you to get more trays, but even then, isn't quite the same level of flow you can get into as some of the other foods when you try to automate them. So the next one is coffee. Coffee is far and away the most simple recipe in the game. You can get full automation, I believe, with just 4 items: 2 coffee machines, a standard grabber, and a smart grabber. And from there, if you put that up against the table and serve, just 1 or 2 people at a time, you can even put it up against 2 tables if you configure it correctly, or 3. You have the full automation. Now you might run into issues because you only have 1 coffee machine making coffee at a time, but that is truly the full automation. You don't have to worry about plates. You don't have to worry about cooking anything. I mean, I guess technically you're cooking the coffee in another coffee machine, but that coffee machine is not going to create grease, and you don't have to worry about the coffee burning. So it's not, you don't have the usual worries when it comes to cooking things. You don't have to portion it. There's no combining. There's no mixing. There's no, it's so simple. It's just coffee. You also get a very small amount of money for the coffee that you serve, but because it's so easy, if you get any modifiers to it, you start to make what feels like an insane amount of money, because if you go from getting 1 coin per coffee served to 3 coins per coffee served because you have a modifier that adds 2 to every item you serve, it starts to feel amazing. And I'm actually going to put it in A for that reason. You might think I would put it in S because it's so easy to automate, but the problem is it's so simple, there's almost nothing to it. You kind of go into autopilot, and as you're re-rolling items looking for things to try and automate coffee, you're really mostly looking for like grabbers. That's pretty much it. Grabbers and coffee machines, and maybe tables, which are pretty easy to find. But all of the sinks and portioners and combiners and all this stuff you roll past just feels like a waste. And so in some strange way with coffee, you're like, please give me a grabber, please give me a grabber, please give me a grabber. And all the stuff you roll past feels really bad in kind of an interesting way. But even more so than burgers, you should get started with coffee. If you just want to try and get automating something, it's not going to give you the full experience. Again, you don't have to worry about plates like you might have to with burgers, but it's so simple. You need such a small amount of things to make it going. And once you do get it going, then it feels pretty good. There's something interesting about I worked really hard to get my restaurant to the point where I do basically nothing all day. With coffee, it's less rewarding because it's so easy, but I think getting to that point for a food, if you've never done it before, getting started with coffee, it'll start to make the game click for you and make you understand why this is such a fun game to play. Okay, so the next one is dumplings. Dumplings are cool. They're pretty straightforward. I believe you just get a dough ball, then you cut meat, put it in, you cut carrots, put it in, and for the basic dumpling recipe, oh, and then you cook that, and that is what you serve to people. So kind of similar to pies, which we'll get to a little bit later. But dumplings, there's not much to them. I like them. They're also nice because there's certain foods on here where you get sides, but the sides are so simple to work with that you actually don't have to worry too much about the side. Like, they're so simple, you're just like, okay, I don't even have to worry about this. And for dumplings, it's soy sauce, where you just have soy sauce, then you have a grabber, and make sure that that grabber is adjacent to the table. And then if the people want soy sauce, it's always available on the grabber. You don't have to do anything to get that for those people. And then if you have super long tables, you can just put that in the middle of like 2 tables, and your soy sauce is figured out. And the reason you'd want to take soy sauce in the first place is because it's going to give you a minus 15% customer modifier, which is huge, especially as you're going later into the game. So dumplings have that as like an upside, where you can really reduce, the number of customers to a large degree if you're able to take soy sauce, and you really don't have to worry too much about that. So dumplings are cool for that. There's not too much to them. I think they're respectable. It's nice that, they use mixers and hobs, and you're serving it on a plate, so you have to use plates. So it's a very standard thing. I like using mixers, stuff like that. Not too much to dumplings, but I do think they're respectable. I think they probably deserve to be up here. Okay, next one is fish. Starting to get into foods that I don't like that much. So fish, you start with a red fish and a blue fish. Customers can order one of those. The red fish cooks faster than the blue fish. Things that cook for a long time make a lot of grease, so you have to worry about a lot of grease with this. Off the bat, you have at least 2 things that you serve to people, which I don't like. After all of describing how I play this game, having 2 recipes is just a big downside. Also, there's not much to it. You're just cooking the fish. You don't have to cut anything or mix anything or portion anything, or there's no combining. It's just cook the fish, give it to people. So I think fish is just, there's not much to it. And also, you start with 2 recipes. Actually, honestly, it's probably like a D. I don't like fish. Now, there are different kinds of runs you can do. If you do a run where you do a bunch of different sides, fish is actually a very interesting one, because if you get crab cakes, instead of people ordering blue fish or red fish or crab cakes, instead you start the day with 2 of those 3, and then you have to figure out how you're going to play that. And on top of that, you'll have 2 different places where the fish will spawn, and you don't actually know if the crab is going to spawn in, the first, I don't know what you'd call it, a cart with fish in it. There's like a cover over it before you start the day, and then when you start the day, they take the cover off and they show you which fish are there. So basically, you don't know if red fish is going to be in the left cart or in the right cart, and so there's interesting planning implications for that. But that's not the type of run that I do, so so I don't really like it. And I'm gonna put it, in D. It just is not it's just not great. Next one is hot dogs. Hot dogs are they're the same thing as burgers. The big difference is that people might want ketchup. So ketchup is the same thing as soy sauce, which is one of the things you can get for dumplings. So it's not hard to automate that. You can just have, again, a grabber pulling ketchup off of the ketchup stand, having that be adjacent to all of your tables. So it's not like a complicated thing to do, but it is just like one extra step burgers, and for that reason it's kind of a negative. The cool thing that you can do with hot dogs is take mustard, and mustard is the same thing as ketchup, but now you have 2 things that you're pulling off with a grabber to be adjacent to your tables, both ketchup and mustard. But by the time you have 2 things doing that, it gets a little awkward because it's taking up so much space next to tables that when you go for the full automation, taking plates off of tables with grabbers, and then you have to put ketchup next to those tables and mustard, and then you might want a teleporter there for serving. Like, there's so much space you need that serving more than one table becomes kind of prohibitive. So hot dogs kind of find themselves in like an awkward spot, especially compared to like burgers, which are the same thing without the ketchup. I guess it is nice that you have the option for taking mustard to do that, but at that point, having 2 of those is more of a downside than it's worth. So I think this is probably a good place to put hot dogs. The next one is pies. Pies I like a lot. they're very simple. You take a dough ball and you turn it into pie crust. So it's more mixing in terms of the dough ball, because you go from flour to dough ball and then you mix that again and it becomes a pie crust. So there's substantially more mixing involved. It's one of the few things that rolling pin is actually really good with. So that's cool, because rolling pin isn't very good. Usually you like scrubbing brush just takes priority over it. And then you put meat into it and then cook it. So it's fairly simple, but the cool thing with pies is that each one sells for like a lot of money. And, you know, once you get mixers that can make the pie crust for you, and then you combine the meat, it's a pretty like straightforward thing, and you're getting a lot of money for it. So you have no problems affording that. You still have to deal with dishes. You know, most of these you're dealing with dishes. There's only a few that you don't deal with dishes, but pies are standard. You're dealing with dishes. So I like them a lot. I think I'll put them over dumplings. They're kind of similar to dumplings, where it's, you know, dough and then you put something into the dough and then you cook it. I think I like them a little bit more because they make you more money, and you know, using the mixer more so for the dough versus for, you know, meat and carrots. You know, it's pretty similar. I just think pies maybe edge them out a little bit, probably because I've played with them more. You know, I just have a soft spot for pies for whatever reason. All right, pizza. So spoilers, pizza is fantastic. Pizza is the best designed food in this game. It is chef's kiss. It uses every single thing in the game. Mixers to mix dough, also for the tomato sauce, also for the cheese. The standard recipe that you serve for pizza is just a cheese pizza. So you make the pie crust, you put that down, you chop a tomato twice, which gives you tomato sauce, you put that on, then you chop cheese, you put that on, then you cook it. It has a long cooking time, so it's a lot of effort relative to most other foods to make, but a pizza makes 4 portions. So when you get to that point, you now can serve 4 customers. It's a lot of effort. It uses everything in the game, and then you're able to serve 4 customers off of that. It is easy as. Yes, there's a lot of steps that get into the automation, but it is so rewarding when you get to that point. And I just love it. Like literally every single thing in the game. You need mixers to mix everything. You need combiners to combine the dough with the sauce and the cheese. You need a portioner to portion the pizza, to cut it into slices. It's really good both with a freezer, because you can freeze an entire pizza, and also with a frozen prep station where you can freeze 4 slices of pizza, which is super rare. It's probably the only food that works really good with both. I guess breakfast probably works pretty well with both, but in any case, pizza's great. It just feels great to do, even if you're making it manually. Like there's nothing better than pizza for getting into the flow of things, because with your flour, you can take it, and I believe you can hit X on the sink, and then you can press A on the rolling pin, or like the oil that they give you, and so you can instantly turn it into the pizza crust. And then it's just a matter of chopping tomatoes, chopping cheese, putting it on it, putting it in the oven. And there's such a cool flow you can get into, where it's like pick up dough, turn it into dough ball, turn it into pizza crust in like, you know, less than a second, put that down, get your tomato going, get your cheese like you just have to take my word for it, or I've done it before. It's just, I love it. Okay, on to salad. Salad sucks. I don't like salad. There's a few issues of it. The first thing is that you have 2 recipes that you're going to serve. One is just lettuce, and then one is lettuce with chopped tomato. So it's fairly straightforward. You don't have to cook anything. There's no hobs involved. But the downside is that people want one of 2 things, just like fish. So it's bad. And the problem with tomatoes is that when you chop them in a mixer, they don't just stop at chopped tomatoes. They will keep mixing until it gets to tomato sauce, which is completely useless for you. You'll actually have to like throw that in the garbage if it gets to that point. So you need to find a way when you go for the full automation, and salad is kind of the only food that has this issue. There might be other ones I'm not thinking of in terms of like, dough balls turning into pie crust on accident or something like that. But salad, you can't avoid it in any way. You have to have a mixer that mixes into tomatoes. And if it's a conveyor mixer, it'll pass the tomatoes. But the problem is, if that gets backed up, it'll keep mixing and turn it into tomato sauce. And then once you get the tomatoes out from in front of it, it'll be stuck, and you'll have this tomato sauce and you need to do something with it. What you can do is get a composting bin and use a smart grabber to grab the tomato paste off of that and throw it in the garbage. And then if that's too slow, you can have, 2 of those going. And in any case, it's just awkward. It feels like, shouldn't there be some way I can set the mixer to not like stop, to have restraint, you know, like it just feels weird, like it shouldn't happen. And then also, again, you're serving two different things, and people will not accept a salad with tomatoes and lettuce on it for their, you can't take the tomatoes off. So if you do that, you're like stuck with tomatoes and lettuce on a, and like eventually somebody might order it, but you're like, okay, I have to put this somewhere. Like it just, I don't like it. It's also super simple. It's just chopping, you know, there's no portioning, there's no combining. I guess there's combining with the tomatoes, to be fair, but only like half the time or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Salad just feels bad. It also feels like everybody in the world wants a tomato salad. It's not like 50-50. It's like 90% of people want tomatoes, and then like a few people want just salad. And I think you can influence that with the display stand. You can have a bunch of those and put lettuce on it and get it to be really simple. But like automation with display stand is like, it's just odd. I don't know. It's hard to it's bad vibes. I don't like salad. All right, next is steak. Steak also kind of sucks. It's a lot. You have to serve steak, which is cooked first to rare, then to medium, then to well done, just like in real life. And people will want their steak cooked at one of those three spots. So I think there is some interesting things you can do in terms of like smart grabbing and cooking steaks to the right level, and then putting them into, you know, frozen prep station to be ready for when people want it. Like, and it's super simple. There's no mixing, so it's not like it's hard to do, but it's a lot of effort thinking of one of three things people might want and trying to figure out, trying to manage that from an automation standpoint is pretty annoying, and it feels like kind of a waste. There are interesting things you can do where you can like cook a steak to rare, and then if they want it well done, you can put that back on and get that to well done faster than if you cooked a raw steak. But that's more of, that's not an automation. That's not an easy thing to automate or anything like that. So yeah, steak just, I mean, there's something interesting to trying to get it to that point, so I'll put it in C, because I think it's a interesting problem of having like three different things they might want, and then, you know, having a really simple way to make that. You know, in theory, you just need, you know, three grabbers, and then three safety hobs, and then three teleporters that go next to your, or I guess you'd also need three auto platers, and then three teleporters that go next to your tables. Then you have to figure out dishes for that. Like, it's at least kind of interesting, like as a problem, but it sucks to automate, honestly. So maybe it should go in D for that reason, but yeah, it's not great either way. Next one is stir fry. I think at a baseline, stir fry is the most complicated. You have woks, and you have to cook rice. Actually, you know, it's so complicated, I have to bring up the recipe in just to go through it, because I like forgot what the whole recipe was. Yeah, okay, so you cook rice, and then they will want chopped carrots or chopped broccoli or both. So at a baseline, you have three things that you might need to make, and there's the process of cooking them, but also cooking them can't just happen on the hob. It needs to be in a stir fry wok on the hob. So if you already have stuff in one, you need to empty it somehow, so you run into awkward issues there. Automating it is an absolute nightmare. Like, yes, it does make a lot of money per serve, but it's one of three things, and you need to cook it twice, and it's super awkward. Like, it's basically made to not be automatable. I haven't had fun with stir fry. It's not for me. It's, you know, it's just not conducive to how I play the game. Too much complexity, too much awkwardness with the woks. You still have to deal with plates. It's just a nightmare. All right, tacos are next. I love tacos. I believe it's just chopped meat, cook. Actually, it might not even be chopped meat. Let me look it up. Yeah, you don't even have to chop the meat. It's just cook it and then combine with taco shells and then serve, and then people will eat, you know, up to, I think it's 1 to 3 tacos. It's something like that. But you serve them on a tray, so you don't have to deal with plates. They'll just grab them off the tray, and then whatever is left will just be still on the tray. I think it's a super fun automation because it's so simple, and because you're like, okay, well, they ate 3 of the tacos off here, so I have 1 taco here. And I think you might be able to combine that with another tray so that you can get your empty trays back. And it's just you know, it's one of the funnest things to to automate to just have these tacos going in circles, and then you have more tacos, and they'll take some tacos off here, and then more tacos are coming, and then you get your trays back, and all you really have to do is cook the meat and then put it on shelves, and you have 4 more things that can serve people. But the amount that they're taking is like a variable rate. I don't know. When I automate it, it's just super fun to watch, and it's not super complicated. I love tacos. I think they're fantastic. I'm gonna put them in the S tier here. I think they're right behind pizza. And yes, it is super simple to do, but just I don't know, just seeing like tacos going in circles and being incentivized to play that way, I think is super fun. All right, the next one is turkey. So turkey you cook for a very long time, then you portion, and the turkey makes 4 portions, and then you're left with a bone, and you have to get rid of the bone. And it's interesting. It's one of the few things you have to worry about trash with, because getting rid of the bone at the start, you have to put it into a trash can, and then you actually have to take the trash outside if that fills up, or if you have nowhere else to put the bones. So it is interesting that like garbage can upgrades are really good for turkey. It's also fairly straightforward. It's just the cooking action and then portioning. There isn't much combining going on. So because of that, it's just an interesting automation. I think it's a little clumsy because of the bone. It is pretty funny trying to automate that, having bones kind of going around in circles and piling up before you can get the compactor bin that actually truly gets rid of the bones. So it is interesting. It does feel clunky at the start to work with. It does also have a really good starter, which is the Christmas cracker, which is basically the same thing as soy sauce or mustard, but the difference is that it's a starter. So they order that first, and then after that they have another ordering phase for the main dish, which is turkey. And so it's one of the few starters I would actually take. Again, it's going to reduce customers by 15%. It makes it that much easier to deal with people in the future. But it is a little bit worse because it comes at an ordering phase before the actual turkey. So you have to take their order twice, which can be a huge downside later on because people just end up sitting at their table forever. But the other good thing about the Christmas cracker I should mention is that it gives you 4 coins per, which is amazing. It's just a really good starter to have. There's no effort involved, and you just get that for free. It's easy to automate. So anyway, turkey is kind of interesting. I'll put it above hot dogs. I think it would go here. I'd rather do breakfast than turkey, so I think that makes sense. And then the last one we have here is spaghetti. Spaghetti is just unfortunate. So I believe you boil water with pasta in it, and do you have to do anything else for basic spaghetti? Yeah, you cook the noodles. Oh yeah, and then you put the water in the garbage, and then you put the noodles from the pot onto a plate, and then you serve people. So in a game where you have, only so many game mechanics and actions and stations that you can work with, one of those stations is a sink, and instead of pouring the water down the sink, you pour it into the garbage, which is just absurd. It's like totally vibes based, but you pour the water in the garbage. Like, what are we doing? It just feels insane. And then it's garbage. And if I'm remembering correctly, maybe this is not exactly as I remember it, or it's been changed or something, but you can't use a combiner to do that. You can't put the pot on a combiner, be combined with the garbage to like garbage the water and then push that forward, or put that onto a plate afterwards, or whatever it might be. And so you can't even fully automate spaghetti. So like spaghetti is just a total dud. Like, it's even worse than stir fry, because stir fry, like, yeah, if you have a giant house and you have a billion hobs going and a trillion autoplaters and a million teleporters and all this stuff, like, I think you can get to full automation. But with spaghetti, you literally can't, and you're throwing the water in the garbage. It just, God, I think about spaghetti and it just hurts. It's just like, no, I don't want to do. It's simple. There's nothing to it, but also you can't automate it, and you're throwing noodles on a plate. It's just not me, man. So anyway, this is my tier list. Fairly balanced as far as all things go. The only C tier being steak is interesting, and honestly, steak might be a D tier. Like, there might only be S, A, B, and D, and no C tier for this game, as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this list. I should have a link in the description with how to get to this tier maker if you want to make it yourself and play around with it and share it with your friends and whatever. I should have a link to it. So yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and share this with your friends and your kids and your kids' friends and your friend's wife and your kid's friend's wife and your wife's friend's kids, and goodbye.